Douglas Adam once wrote, "I may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I have ended up where I need to be." How might this quote describe an experience in your life? While getting my degree, I was just taking classes that interested me that also had to do a little with my major. Turns out, I was getting my minor in chemistry without even realizing it. I used to program in middle school in the mid-90s for fun, just because I was a nerd. I'm a software developer now, but my degree was in sociology, and I did nearly a decade of awful underpaid social work, then got a job at a company for their travel perks, and stumbled my way into becoming their lone software developer and web designer. I could have been doing this shit all along and not been so broke at a job where I was getting punched in the face or spat on by violent high schoolers. Sad thing is, the main reason I changed my major was because I got a D in my first computer science class in college. But that was higher than the class average because the teacher was awful. It was Java. You needed that one prerequisite to start the rest of the catalog. And I wasn't going to waste another semester retaking it because that would mean pushing probably 4 other classes back another semester. Now the main thing I do at work is Java for Android, and I learned it in a month watching YouTube. I was a certified Ford mechanic. 2008 through 2009 happened, and no work was coming in. Got a job to teach auto mechanics in Iraq for the new Iraqi army. As a result, I learned I have a passion for people trying to better their life. I ended up sponsoring my Iraqi interpreter to come to the US. Since then, I came back and finished my degree, and now I'm learning designing at an amazing company. My Iraqi brother is now married here in the States to an amazing wife, and they have a kid. He has a great job and is finishing his degree as well. Life can be an amazing journey. Enjoy the ride. My family has been reading through the Stormlight Archive books by Brandon Sanderson. One of the main themes is the first oath of the Knights Radiant. Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. This has deep meanings for me and in my life. It helped me through some recent slumps as well. Strive to put the lives of all things before the death of any. Do better, be better, live better. It doesn't matter where you end up, what matters is how you get there. Sure, you could set goals. If you crush those around you to achieve those goals, it wasn't worth it. Conversely, if you elevate those around you and make a better life for everyone you come in contact with, you may find that your life is much more fulfilling than if you just went directly to those goals. The most important step a person can make on their journey through life isn't the first one, it's the next one. Keep moving forward. I'm proud of you, internet stranger. I got home once and absentmindedly threw away my socks for no reason. I just took them off and put them in the trash. When I realized what I did, I dug through the trash, only to find out that both socks had holes in them. Turns out they belonged in the trash anyway. I've never found a quote that described that situation more perfectly than this one. In the 90s, I lived in Springfield, Missouri, and absolutely loved it there. Never wanted to be anywhere else. My wife finished college and got a job in another state not far away. I didn't want to move there, but I did reluctantly. Within a couple of years, I absolutely loved it there. Made a ton of friends, had a great job, and couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Lived there 20 years and thought it would be where I die. Last year, we moved to Connecticut, again for my wife's job, and I love it here too and can't really imagine moving back. It turns out, it's not the place I live, but who I live with that matters. My wife is my home, and where she is where I need to be. When I was younger, I used to sleepwalk. I slept and walked straight to the end of the hall, where there were 2 doors, one to the bathroom and one to my older brother's room. Opened the door, lifted the lid, and peed. Turns out, I had opened the door, lifted my brother's blanket, and peed. Not where I intended, but I finally got back at that jerk for farting on me for years. Never planned to divorce. Never planned to leave Arizona. Never planned to remarry. Never planned to leave a career I loved. Never planned to be hit by a car. I've done all of that in the last 2 years. I completely rewrote my entire life and every plan I had in every way imaginable. Would not have it any other way. My new husband and my new life are a level of happiness I've never known. Seriously, even recovering from a serious injury and everything that has gone with that is better than my previous life because of who I have to love me now. It took several years to conceive our son. By the time he was 3 years old, we had tried many times with medical assistance for a second. We gave up and started an adoption. Well, after we got all the paperwork together and sent off to China, we found out that my wife was expecting. Okay, we can deal with that, as my wife put it. What's the worst that could happen? But the ultrasound showed that it was twins. So my kids are 18, 14, 14, and 14 now. It's not what we would have ever planned, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I suffer an extreme trauma that took my legs. I also went through a month trapped in my own nightmares while in an induced coma. Needless to say, it is an experience I would never put anyone else through. I came out on the other side far more empathetic, patient, and understanding as well. The personality change is so drastic. People that knew me before say I'm an entirely different person. I'm a loving father, as this new me. I met the love of my life, as this new me. Despite how hard living in this body is, I love life more than ever. If I could see into the past and alter what happened, I wouldn't. The suffering was horrific, but transformative. To become who I am now, the accident must happen. I'm sorry, past me, but if I'm honest, you aren't a good person. I don't miss being you. In college, it was my dream to get an internship at Harley Davidson. I rode a Harley, worked at a Harley dealer during the summers, and even though my GPA wasn't perfect, I thought I was more than qualified for the job. I still do. I had a preliminary interview with them through a recruiting company, and I never even got to the second round. The internship I got ended up being a way better opportunity. It was only a few miles from my parents, I got a free gym membership to the gym next door, and the culture was great. Getting stunned by Harley was just what I needed. In the late 90s, I was in the Navy and getting ready to transfer to shore duty. So I was calling my detailer. He had orders for me to stay in Jacksonville, or I could go somewhere else. I decided to wait and talk to my wife that night, because she had mentioned wanting to move. When I talked to her, she said to take the orders in Jacksonville. That night though, there was a huge snowstorm across the Midwest, and the detailers were not able to come to work for a week. By the time I was able to get back in touch with him, the orders were already taken. I had to move to Pensacola and got orders to Italy, where my wife and I split up and got a divorce. In 2005, I retired from the Navy and ended up in California. I got a great job, which I still have, and remarried. We now live in Texas and have twin 8-year-old girls. I couldn't imagine my life without them. It's not where I intended to be, but this is where I belong. Got a job in concert security. Somehow, I'm a tiny, incredible, non-intimidating 5'4" female, who at the time had waist-length blonde hair. I was terrified and had no idea what I was doing. Anything involving security is not something I ever imagined my quiet self doing, and it really shocks people when they find out. But I gained so much confidence from that job. You have to be pretty assertive to tell a sexist old redneck white guy that his pocket knife is not coming in, no matter how much of a tantrum he throws. I learned pretty quick not to take any shit from people like that. Also got to interact with artists and other celebrities occasionally, which is an interesting experience and entirely different skill set. Still no concerts where I am thanks to COVID, but I'll be going back to that job as soon as I can. I had no idea what I wanted to be in high school. My dad died sophomore year, so I moved in with my mom and changed school. At the new school, I joined ROTC, and that's what I wanted to do. After high school, I applied to the University of Hawaii. I got in, but it was too expensive, so I applied for Colorado. Got in, even more expensive, so I applied to an in-state school. Missed the deadline, so I had to work a food service job for a year. Finally started college, and rent was way too expensive. So I applied to be an RA. Got free rent, but lost friends. Friends ended up doing bad things and sucking, but I made new friends in the RA job. Almost lost the job because of my grades. Met a girl who helped me get my grades up and introduced me to a cool professor. Really enjoyed the professor's courses and built a great professional relationship. Professor talks up this research lab, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do it. Summer of my graduating year, I have no idea what I'm going to do when I graduate. Professor hits me up and asks me if I want to go to the lab, which is on the other side of the country. I decide to take the leap and go. It's a 6-week course, so I figured it'd give me time to figure out what I'm going to do when I move back home. While there, I make friends with the other students, and one invites me to go hang out at the docks with her. We hang out and drink beer, and a new professor walks up and has a beer with us. Dude offers me a job in a different state, 1,000 miles from anyone I know. Fuck it, yeah, I'll go. It's whatever. Before I move, I see the girl I met back in college again. I decided we should date. Then I moved very far away from her. Now I'm sitting here working as a marine biologist, about to start my PhD in a new state at a prestigious university, with my girlfriend maybe moving in with me, with plenty of positions in her field near me. Earning more than I ever thought I would, getting a full ride scholarship, having my own place, a car, and feeling quite successful, all because my dad died. I snuck into a frat party at a university I didn't go to and met the love of my life because he was playing in the band. We didn't see each other again until 5 years later. We dated long distance for almost 3 years and have finally lived in the same city for 6 months. I didn't intend to go to that party, but ended up right where I needed to be 8 years later. Might be one of the only good things to come out of a frat party. In the summer of 2011, I was doing my school placement in Ghana, then had plans to travel to India after my 3 months was completed to visit a friend who was doing her placement there. I am from Canada. I realized right before I was supposed to go to India that my visa was only valid from the day I got it, not from the day I was planning to leave for India, so it was already invalid. I was disappointed but made my way home. The day before I was originally supposed to come home, I was invited out with a few friends that I used to work with. I ended up meeting my now husband, even though I missed out on part of my trip. I was glad it didn't work out the way I had planned. I don't think I ever would have met him if I hadn't come home early. I wasn't the type to go out a lot, and I just happened to be working less since I was expected home so soon, so I had some free time. COVID wrecked my plans to move away from my hometown. However, being in this area has provided me with opportunities to get a decent paying job. One I applied for a year ago, but didn't get at the time. And to teach classes at a local community college. Very valuable experience. As I hope to someday go further in academia. The circumstances that allowed me to get this job were somewhat uncommon, so I was very lucky to have this opportunity here. I still want to move away after a year or two, but for now, I'm in a good spot. You are missing some important context. Just prior to that, Dirk says something along the lines of, I find someone who looks like they know where they are going and follow them. Then ends with, I may not go where I intended, but I usually end up where I need to be. This is the holistic part of his detective agency philosophy. I applied this by following the Grateful Dead on the Touch of Grey tour. I ended up failing a class in college and had to hang out for an additional semester to retake it. During that semester, on my way to class, I ran into a girl I knew from high school and we started talking. Hadn't seen her in about 5 years. This was in 2010. Married in 2013. First daughter in 2015, second daughter in 2016, and our third this past June. Thank God I didn't understand organic chemistry. Straight out of high school, I followed my love of theater into going to university for theater production. After a few years of not knowing when I'd see my next paycheck and went back to college for business, turns out I'm no good in a classroom setting, so I left. Now I work at a job I love, a cannabis store, and spend my days with the coolest people and sometimes help someone get through the pain of chemo, or get to sleep after a week of restless nights. But I like to say that I have a useless arts degree, dropped out of business school, and now I'm a drug dealer. I was on Omegle, not really sure of what I wanted or what to even talk to people about. My ex had just left for a week with one of her best friends, cause she still lived with me. Long story and a lot of drama. Met this chick on there, decided to just talk about gaming instead of getting off. We clicked really well, made a ton of jokes, and I sat there talking to her for like an hour. Asked for her number to keep talking, and we stayed up texting each other silly, stupid things. I couldn't tell you the last time I was happy before I met her. My ex saw I was texting another girl, flipped out, and left her best friends for another week. She had me feeling devastated. This chick sat through listening to me being sad and broken up, and still talking to me. Time goes by, we like each other a lot. We get together, I fly out to meet her. She's even more beautiful in person. Somehow thinks I'm attractive. We kiss, and now she lives with me. It's been almost 2 years, and the randomness and sheer luck that I met her still amazes me. I probably wouldn't be alive if I hadn't met her. In middle school, kissed my best friend and got teased mercilessly for being gay. Parents yanked me out of school and tried to beat the gay out of me. Got sent to Christian camps and a different high school cross country, so I didn't have any of the same friends who could influence me towards sin. Basically started my entire social life over at 14 as an abused kid wanting to die. Met my husband in that high school. Our first date was 11 years ago. Still gay AF. Parents didn't win. No one's probably gonna read this, so after some bouts of depression and alcohol abuse and some drugs as a teenager, I couldn't hold a job and needed money. Selling sexy pics online turned into camming, which turned into dating sugar daddies, which is a load of shit, so I started sex work. At the time, it was good money, and I couldn't be fucked doing anything else. I was drinking heavily every night, super depressed, but generally enjoying my work. One night, I meet this really lovely customer, just super sweet. We'd play around sometimes, and he was always respectful and kind and just a good person. About a month later, I found out I was pregnant, got an abortion, and slipped into my worst depression. On a dark night, I needed help, and I remembered that one client that was always there for me. I called him, he came over and held me while I cried. He never left. I stopped sex work a few days later, and he encouraged me to get back to school. We have been together for 5 years. I have been sober since that night, and we are saving for a house. We have 2 cute as hell dogs, and have been talking about starting our family soon. I never thought I would meet my soulmate doing what I did, but here I am. I started my professional career with the aim of being a concept designer for video games. I'm now thoroughly disillusioned with the abuse and exploitation of the games industry. Working in the medical field, getting killer benefits with art as a side hustle, making stable pay in a time where I am extremely lucky and thankful to have that. Who knows where I'd be if I'd continued my pursue games. I spent my whole childhood and early college years with the sole goal of having a child and being a good mother to that child. Early 20s, my mental health deteriorated significantly, and I started having fears I would pass my mental health problems onto my future children. Early 30s, and I have abandoned all dreams of giving birth to a child of my own. I would never want another being to be subject to these feelings I have daily. As of this morning, I am single once again. Not that it matters much to me. I'll find someone someday. Perhaps the next person I am in a relationship with will already have a child, and I can be a wonderful stepmother to that child. I've continued along the path of being a caregiver and finally found the place I belong. Hospice. I am a hospice CNA. Sorry, Mom, no 4-year college for me. I could work towards being a hospice RN, but I would have less time to spend with my patients. As a CNA, I am able to spend time speaking with my patients and their families. I am good at it. I can sense what people need physically, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. My greatest fear has always been death/after death, but spending time caring for the dying has given me a greater understanding of the process. I no longer fear death and spend my time helping people transition peacefully, knowing that I truly care for each and every one of them. TLDR, goal in life was to give birth and ended up helping people die with dignity. Please see anything past the age of 13 when I started having intention about where I wanted to go. Seriously, I hate the interview/get to know you question of where do you see yourself in 5 years, because I'm never where I thought I would be 5 years later. Some parts have been absolute shit, but overall I'm in the right place. I was head over heels for a boy that didn't feel the same way. I waited 7 years for him to catch feelings for me. He never did, and it hurt. He wasn't nice about it, and it's just so bad. But through him, I met his sister. She's the greatest person. She's my best friend. I needed her in my life, and while I wanted him, he isn't what I needed. I was happy living in my old college town working for the state government. Then my boss passed me over for a promotion and gave it to someone that had only worked there for a month. It was a real slap in my face. I immediately looked for another job and found something in another city within the first month of searching. I took a leap and moved there. And it's been great. The new job doubled my salary, I met my now wife, and I ran into some old high school friends that integrated me into their friend group right away. I'd still be withering at that state job if they gave me that promotion. Me being in the military. From a young age, I wanted to join. I enlisted at 18 with the plan of finishing my degree in 4, with being in the same career field when I went active. Those first 4 years were dark, bleak, and an eye-opener for me. Many thoughts of getting out, intentionally failing to get the boot, and many other ways. It's where I realized in the hardest times where you truly shine brightest. This is where I had to check myself, get my ass in gear, and quit waiting for external forces to motivate me to get shit done. It led me to make sacrifices, to include paying back on sign-on bonus. From there, I got my journeyman skill level, on to craftsman next, promoted to an NCO, now wrapping up my bachelor's. It's been a rough, hard, and long road, but I know it was for the better. This was actually part of my wedding vows. I had an incredible relationship, thought that was my family. Then our daughter died. He left, and I was adrift. I found my now husband a year later. He's been my rock, the mac to my cheese, also in my vows. I never thought I'd marry someone like my man, but he was the one who pulled me out of my dark place, and continues to every day. I wake up for him, he calls me on my shit, and I get angry, but he still helps me through it. I didn't realize when I said those vows, how true they would be each and every day. I wouldn't trade our relationship for anything, ever. Definition of my entire school career. I know a lot of people can relate, but if I was given a prompt in English class, and the class was told to present, it didn't take me long to realize that I interpreted it the entirely wrong way, yet still got the point across. Because of this, I always went last in presenting, so I would have time to redo my essay, seconds before presenting. Same with math and history. Open-ended questions can burn in hell, even if I get to the intended destination. I found out I was pregnant in February 2020. In June, we found out a baby girl has a heart defect. I had her a month early during a pandemic, after a pregnancy full of complications. We spent 65 days in NICU and collected a dozen diagnoses and specialists. We will still have surgeries and procedures and appointments for the foreseeable future. This is not what I expected when I saw those pink lines 10 months ago. This isn't the dream I had, but when she's cuddled on my chest, her tiny hand clutching my shirt, making tiny squeaks, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm so happy she chose to be her mommy. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I am more assertive, patient, resilient, and thankful. I was given her as my daughter for a reason, and I don't plan to waste it. Graduated high school with absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. Moved from the East Coast to California and got into some trouble. Eventually became addicted to the opiates and could not break the rehab relapse cycle. Ended up back in rehab, but needed to do something differently. I agreed to go a sober living program instead of just going back home after my inpatient stay. Ended up in a program back on the East Coast and have been there ever since. I'm a little over 3 years clean and work as a case manager at an inpatient rehab, where my job is to facilitate aftercare plans. The other day, I was awarded by the entire company. They have multiple facilities all over the country for the work that I do. I never would have been able to be as effective as I am with my job had it not been for my own mistakes and life choices that I found a passion for helping people that struggle with the same thing I struggled with. It's literally tattooed on my arm. I got it as a reminder to keep going when I almost failed out of college, moved back, and took a couple years off. Seemed to work too. If I had stuck with it, I'd probably end up at some company in the Midwest and stuck indefinitely. Instead, I got a degree and moved to Germany for a few years. Just moved back and am figuring out what's next. But it definitely would have not been anything I had predicted when I decided to take a break from college. First year of high school, I was swimming at a pretty damn high level. I could not imagine doing any other sport since I had never done anything else, and all my siblings were also swimming. That morning, my mom drops me at school and tells me about the tryouts for the basketball team. My mom and dad were both basketball players at their university back in the day, and would obviously like if I played, but would never force me to. I didn't want to go at all. I had never played basketball before. I was in a new city. I had just moved, forgot to mention that. So I didn't know the bus schedule very well, and wanted to chill that evening. A few minutes before the day ended, I make up my mind. I went to tryouts and did pretty well. At that age, most don't have insane skill, so my athleticism gave me a huge advantage. I made the team, pretty sure they didn't cut many, and that year I had the time of my life. I was swimming just because everyone else in my family was swimming. I was gifted, sure, but looking back, I never had fun. That year taught me that. I have a very vivid memory near the end of the year when I had a dilemma choosing between swimming and basketball. We had a tournament. After our first game, I was showering with the boys and I told myself, man, this is what I want to do. I dropped swimming despite having just won a gold, silver, and bronze medal at the provisional championship. Dedicated myself to basketball, and 4 years later, I'm playing D1, best player on the team with the possibility of having a scholarship to higher levels. I simply can't imagine what my life would have been if I let the lazy side of myself take over that day. In 2009, I was living in New York and knocked up a woman who lived in Virginia while she was on vacation. Got a call 9 months later and sold all my possessions, left grad school, and got a lawyer to establish custody. I moved to Virginia and got screwed by the apartment manager, so lived in my car with my puggle while going to job interviews for 2 months. Eventually, the judge ordered me to Getting to Know Your Child classes, which were a group of guys just like me, trying to do the right thing, but no idea how to do it. During the first class, I broke down crying. And then, after class, a guy came up to me and said I needed a drink. I told him I had no money, and he offered to buy me a beer, and took me to a local pool hall. I ended up getting completely wasted and couldn't drive home. To top it off, a cop parked right next to my car and told me if I got in it, he'd take me to jail. So I did what any sane person would do and started to pitch the tent I had in my trunk in the parking lot. At this moment, an 84 Toyota Corolla drove by and the most beautiful girl pulled up to me, laughed, and said, "What the duck are you doing?" I explained the situation and she agreed to drive me home. After smirking at my guard cop, I got in the back seat and we drove around for 2 hours until she eventually brought me back to my car to fall asleep. We've been together for 10 years, married for 7. I adopted her son, and my daughter now calls her mom. I went to college to be a teacher, high school English to be exact. A lot happened that sidetracked me. I was an undiagnosed bipolar and struggled through a few big episodes, until a major one took me down for the count. My family disowned me, I was financially tapped out, and I dropped out of school and got my first full-time job. I worked in a call center and randomly ended up in a business analysis position after my 1 year of dues in customer service. And I really loved it. I didn't know such a job existed. I went back to school to finish an English degree. Changing majors would have taken significantly more time at that point. Since then, I've gotten my MBA, and I'm still loving being an analyst. If I hadn't had a major episode in college, if my parents hadn't disowned me and refused to sign my financial aid paperwork, if I hadn't taken that job in customer service call center, none of these being events I hoped would take place in my life, I wouldn't be where I am. I still think I would be a great teacher and would love it, but frankly, I love being an analyst. Get paid more, have more opportunity for advancement, and don't have to deal with literal politics, so I think I'm happier in the long run.